Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Daniel Hendrick Experience. Every Sunday, we're bringing to you interviews from opera stars around the world, and today is no difference, my friend. And I just wanted to remind you all that you can find the video version of the podcast on YouTube. You just go to the Daniel Hendrick Experience, and there you're going to find dozens and dozens and dozens of interviews with opera stars from around the world. And also on the regular podcast area, you can go to danielhendrick.com and click on the podcast, and it'll take you right to Buzzsprout, and you can hear the audio in case you're driving and just want to listen to all of the podcast. And thanks again for all of your emails and notes that you're sending me, and questions and recommendations of people you would like to have on the show. I really appreciate it. And for those of you who have not subscribed, I would appreciate that when you go to Buzzsprout for the podcast, you hit subscribe and become a member. It's only $3 a month, and it just helps keep all of this going. But let's get to our guest today, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Andrew Owens, tenor. Andrew has a voice that is very, very unique. It is super, super beautiful. And the technique is just flawless, up and down, right through the passaggio, like there's no break in his voice. It's really marvelous how he does it. Very lyric sounding, but rich and colorful at the same time. So Andrew, whom the Irish Times described as having a ringing top register and easy fluidity to bel canto writing, has quickly built a reputation as a promising singer of his generation, exhibiting a beautiful Italianate timbre and soaring top notes and effortless agility. And I can tell you firsthand, being a tenor myself, mad respect for this young man. He's singing all over the world. And you might know him also for a master class he did with Maestro Fisichella, and that's on YouTube. And to hear him rehearsing with the Maestro Che Gelida Manina from La Boheme and processing that high C at the end. And Andrew just manages that flawlessly with a ringing, free high C. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring in the tenor sensation, Mr. Andrew Owens. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as advertised, we have the superstar tenor with us, Andrew Owens, right here on the Daniel Hendrick Experience. My brother, thank you for being here today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
My honor. What a beautiful, beautiful, spinning, free, rich tenor you are. And I got to tell you, I'm a huge fan now. You just sing. By listening to you sing from one tenor to another, you really capsulize the old term bel canto in your singing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's always what I'm aiming for. So
yeah, not in the sense of the propaganda use of bel canto. Every teacher out there says,
yeah.
"Oh, my technique is bel canto." Well, yours in the sense of beautiful singing, free singing. It's pretty remarkable. And I had already been a fan of yours before I contacted you, because I saw you with the Maestro Fisichella, right?
Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes.
And I remember watching, and I'm like, who is this young guy with that amazing top, so free? What was that experience like for you when you worked with him?
Oh my God, it was pretty incredible. It was the very first year of my teacher, Jack Livigny, of his summer program in Sicily. In the very first year he did it, or for the first 2 years. Was it the first 2 years? No, the first year it was in Palermo.
Okay.
And that there was a day trip that day to go to just outside of Catania to meet with him, and he had been one of my favorite tenors for a long time, and I was one of those singers who just marveled as to why he wasn't that well known in the States, aside from his handful of performances at the Met and just not that much else. And I had flown in, I think, the day before from the States, so I was absolutely wrecked and just really tired and. But I was super excited, got up really early. We got in the car and we drove, over to pretty much across the island to go see him. And I'll never forget, we pull up to his house and there he is, just, hands on his hips, chewing his gum. And we're just like, I'm like, that's him. He's right there.
Wow.
And, there's some B-roll footage, so to speak, from that session where I was the first one up, and I actually tried to sing Ate Okada, and I just was jet lagged as hell and everything. And he looks at Jack, my teacher, and he goes, "He shouldn't be singing this. He shouldn't be singing this." And Jack was like, "No, he can. He's just tired, jet lagged." And I said, "Maestro, can I maybe, at the lunchtime break, let me eat something. I'll come back. May I sing again after?" And he goes, "Yeah, okay." And then actually after the lunch break is when I did that video, and I had a bit more of my voice back at my disposal, and I was able to work with him, and I kept up a connection with him. We still text fairly often and chat, and whenever I'm in Sicily, which I try to go every year if I can, to go visit him and see how he's doing. And he's still got that voice, and he's still doing it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, well, hearing you were working on Que Gelida Manina for a large portion of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was blown away listening to your voice, just at the sheer beauty of that instrument.
Thank you.
For me, hearing your Sarsuela thing that you sang reminded me of a young Jose Carreras. It was just
thank you.
So beautiful and free. So, what did you learn, if anything, from him in that session that you didn't already know?
There was a lot of the idea of what you just actually started the interview with saying, and that key word of spin and keeping it spinning. And it was this idea of the idea of breathing as you are actually emitting tone. And viewing the tone that you are holding as, a whole bunch of 16th notes tied together, and not just this one single note with the corona on top of it. It's the idea of actually, and also what helped is he actually helped really get my voice out of my throat, which I was taking a concept that I was learning way too far, which was just this idea of chordal closure and tilting the larynx, and I was trying to control it locally right here for a very long time. And it's the antithesis of what my teacher teaches me. And even he was just like, "I think you're stopping it a bit." And I was like, "Well, I'm really trying to stretch and tilt." And he's like, "Yeah, but you can't just do it here." So I remember getting with him and just watching the way he sings. And I went back the following summer, actually, and worked a bit with Nelly Mirichoyu, who phenomenal bel canto soprano and a wonderful singer. And I told Nelly, I said, "I just watch Salvatore, the way he sings, he pulls his stomach in." And she goes, "He's not pulling his stomach in." I said, "I beg to differ." And she goes, "Watch him closer." And when I watched him, it was just this idea of the way he was breathing and the way he was supporting. And a colleague of mine, brilliant tenor who I know you're aware of, Freddie De Tomaso. Freddie, I remember, I always loved chatting technique with all my friends. And Freddie told me about, like, when he thinks about breathing and support, he's like, it's like I feel like I'm putting on a pair of pants that's one size too small. And when I really thought about that idea of just this lift that happens, and there's absolutely no pulling in and no sucking in that happens, but there is this natural drawing in that happens. And my path to that kind of realization was a bit circuitous and all over the place, but eventually I landed on it. Because I think for a long time, I confused the support. And once I was able to kind of connect these two things, this and tie one to the other, it became a lot easier. And it all really kind of came back to a very simplified approach that I was getting from Salvatore, which is just, very, and his method is so old school, and he'll
Mm-hmm.
be, I think he made everybody, he went down the line at that very first video, the one that I'm on, and he's pointing at everybody and making them just go, and just do really good glottal onsets. And he goes, that's all you need. That's vocalization. Basta. So,
Fascinating.
well, I think he ascribes to that old school mentality that goes back to Caruso, where he says you can't breathe yourself into the right phonation. No amount
Mm.
of is going to set up this position properly. And if
Mm-hmm.
this is set up correctly, this largely takes care of itself, which I I believe. I think that it's absolutely true. You notice this really does kind of fall into line. Now, of course, when we're talking about sustaining really long phrases and messa di voce and all this kind of stuff, you have to think a bit more with what's happening down here. But
Mm-hmm.
as far as just boom, go singing, this is right, this is fine. I do believe that.
Wow. And do you perceive your larynx staying level in the medium position, or does it drop slightly?
It's level. I'm the. I mean, it's that floating Corelli kind of idea where it's never an idea about it going down, because the more downward pressure you try to put on it, it works in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same as when you have students say expand, stay out, stay out, stay out. They're inevitably going to crunch down because they are trying to push out. And
Got
when you
it.
have this idea, you see them bear down and grunt. Well, I'm trying to keep my lower ribs expanded. It's like you're doing the actually you're doing the opposite in the process. So the
Yes.
idea of trying to get the larynx down, you're just going to create this overly chesty sound of ah. There's nothing low larynx about that sound.
That's awesome to hear a tenor talk about
Yeah.
this. So, did you naturally have a top, or did you have to learn how to do it?
Yeah, I was kind of a freak, if I'm honest. I studied. My very first teacher was Enrico Di Giuseppe, who was a phenomenal tenor in the '70s and '80s. Had an incredible career at the Met, City Opera, a lot of other places, but primarily in those two houses. And Ricky was just renowned for his high notes. They were reviving stuff at City Opera for him because nobody else could sing the stuff.
Mm.
Um, he was doing the Queen trilogy. He was doing Puritani. He was doing the Astrologer in Golden Cockerel and stuff like that. And that was his bread and butter. He just had those notes, and he had me very naturally approach it, really going to falsetto and then strengthening it. And I would just do an exercise all the time, just going ah, and we just kept going up and up. And I remember him just laughing, going, "You don't stop." And I was going
Right.
to a very reinforced falsetto up to. I was taking that I kid you not, at like 17 and stuff, up to like high F and everything, and it
Mm-hmm.
was still a very young boy's strong falsetto, but I think one thing that also really works in my favor is that uh, I have a knack for mimicry, and I can really listen to people and do impersonations and do stuff like that. So when I was younger and I was first listening to opera, I would listen to my heroes, and I would try to make their full-throated sound in like my little bedroom as a kid I'm like, well, let me make that sound, but it sounds too falsetto-y. So I would sit there and go like, and
Uh-huh.
do that kind of voce finta, kind of even from a younger age. So I was able to kind of already figure out this thin mechanism from a really young age, and largely that's how I
Wow.
sang my top until I found teachers in my early 20s who were like, it's a nice sound, but you need a bit more chest in the sound. And then I had other people bring out more of the chest and really get me to realize that what I was doing, while beautiful, it's not really going to carry in a house.
Would you say though, but that process of mixing that falsetto going up paved the way for you to be able to fill in the dots?
Big time, big time.
Yes.
There's a couple schools of thought. There are people who say you build the voice from the bottom up and from the top down, and I think that both have merits, because
Yes.
I will say that the big issue I had in building a voice from the top down was my passaggio was a mess. And
Amazing.
I actually stumbled into Rossini by accident because I could do a lot of fiorature and all this kind of stuff and go high notes, and it masked all the problems I had in my passaggio.
Ah, because you were just on the other side.
I was just kind of, and then give me, Cesta, give me Si di trovarla, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Give me Ecco ridente, I fall apart.
Uh-huh.
And that was a huge problem, was trying to sustain those phrases. And
Yes.
realized what I was doing because I largely was singing with one pressure the entire way and actually one chord position the entire way.
Uh-huh.
So I had found the length that I needed for the top in the chords, and I was trying to take that all the way down to the bottom and trying to sing low C's like they were high C's.
Got it.
Because if I had what I thought was going to work in my FG range, um, which had a lot of closure to it but didn't have a lot of tilt, I was like, great, I don't want to let go of that position. It's working, great. So I ended up getting this tremolo kind of in my lower notes where I was like, like this, because I'm trying to trying to sing the same length of chord, which you just can't do.
That is fascinating. I love your explanations. And you have such a specificity with the way you're describing it that's very unusual. Uh, I'm surprised. I've done so many of these interviews now, mostly with tenors, by the way. But
Good.
I, I am shocked at how many of them don't know what the hell they're doing. They just go by instinct. But what you're talking about is a lot of specificity that I'm on the same page with you. I have an analysis on the way you're singing. I want to see if you relate to what I'm hearing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Go
you were
for it.
talking about your passaggio was kind of screwed up and troublesome. But when I'm hearing you now, I don't hear you doing in the conventional sense of what they used to call covering or closing. It sounds like when you go through the passaggio, you're just mixing. And so there's this even line all the way through. Do you relate to that, or is that far,
No, I
far
do.
from?
I do. I do. I'll backtrack to one thing you said actually about I have colleagues who have no idea what they're doing when they sing, and I think it makes them better singers, if you ask
Well,
me.
that too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, as I was telling you, I worked with DeStefano, and
Oh,
when he tried to explain it in his master classes and stuff, it was so rudimentary that it was
yes.
hilarious.
I believe it. Yeah. But back to the question at hand that you had just now was, um, yes, it took me a while to really figure out registers and to figure out what really was head voice and what was chest voice. And a lot of it was sensation and where I was feeling things.
Uh-huh.
And having somebody explain to me, okay, do you know that sensation? That's what it is. And there's people who go like, you shouldn't sing based on sensation. I said, but they're good indicators and they're good guides of what you're doing. If you
Absolutely.
tell a teacher who is very good and has a good ear, I'm kind of feeling it here and this and that, they can say, oh, you might be detaching from this, or you know what, if you're feeling it only exclusively here, your epiglottis may not be lowering the way it needs to be. It's very important. So the people who say don't sing based on sensations, they're important.
So the people that say that, are they like only go by sound? Is that what they're saying?
I haven't bothered to tread into their
Okay.
territory enough to have a conversation.
Yeah, because
I guess, please.
there are times on stage when you can't hear yourself, and if you're not
Mhm.
going by sensation, you're going to be screwed.
Very much so. Very much so. And there's sometimes I've been in a room with a colleague who has a massive voice. You go out in the hall and it disappears, and you're like, "Wow, okay, that's unbelievable the way the science works." But back to your question regarding the passaggio is, yeah, I think that I inadvertently was loading up on too much chest voice as I got into that really vital tilt range between C and the F in the passaggio.
Hmm.
And I think that I was just getting a bit too chesty in an effort to make a bigger sound. Where what I was doing was I was singing with too fat of a chord position. It was a bit too thick. And once I started doing a lot of really good exercises with my teacher and stuff that I really understood, harmonic work actually, which is incredible. Yes. And just doing exercises like isolating the harmonic on notes like D and E flat, which is, you know, where we live and we have to be able to sing comfortably. And realizing that what I was doing was I was falling out of the harmonic by getting too chesty, and I would sit here and isolate it and then vibrate into it, and I would just inevitably hear like, ah, this, instead of this, ah, and vibrating up into it. Yes. And it's what I tell my students now is I'm like, I just think about, you know, if you have a tone that you're going, ah, your vibrato is not ah, the vibrato is ah.
Exactly.
And that's not an original thing by me. I mean, that's something that my teacher tells me is just this idea of thinking of your vibrato being on that upper side. And you have to be careful not to get too extreme with that. I mean, we hear that in Björling when he sharps quite a bit when he sings.
Yep. And Corelli too at times. Yes.
Big time. But I think it's really great to be able to do that kind of work, and you'll really start to feel this kind of halo effect from about here, where it really starts to strike up there, and you get out of this up there kind of feeling. And it's, again, it goes back to sensations, and where I know if it's, you know, it's even to the point where, like, I know when I wake up in the morning, like the first few words I utter on FaceTime or something or whatever, or when I pick up the phone, I'm like, okay, I'm there or I'm not there. I just based on that, you know?
Wow.
My other teacher, I had a great baritone teacher in college, Dominic Costa, who I still, every time I'm in the area, I always go to see him and go see his wife, and he's very much like a grandfather to me. He's very close. And Dom used to tell me all the time, he's like, I had one exercise that I would do in the morning before a show, and I would know if it was going to be a good day or a bad day. And he said it was literally a siren, and if there was a break in the siren, just in falsetto, if I sat there and went, ooh, I'm like, uh-oh, not going to be a good day. But if it was, ooh, uh-oh, I don't know about that. Like he knew right then, okay, I got to work a little bit harder. That's just how familiar with his instrument he was throughout his career.
Yes. Yeah. I actually teach that siren thing all the time with the falsetto, and I've helped so many tenors that take Kejali Damani for whatever, they can't get the high C or the B flat, and I'm taking them out of the aria and I'm saying, okay, we're just going to do a siren to those notes, and all of a sudden the note's easy.
Exactly.
But as soon as because that's a different part of your brain functioning, you know, that's the neuroscience of it. So as soon as you don't think of it as singing, as soon as you don't think of it as opera, and it's just function of sound, and that's what the siren gives us. Would you agree with that?
100%. And I think it's just, like I said, it's knowing where in the range you are and not obsessing over it, because I know there's some people out there, okay, D needs a bit of a turn, E flat open, it can't be that either, because you'll drive yourself crazy. Like thinking about where you are, like, okay, here comes this note. You see a note on a page and you go, oh, but it's being aware of tracking kind of the resonance and tracking the harmonics as you go up. And, you know, I've had tenors ask me like, hey, when you're on this note and you're in this, what vowel are you singing? I'm like, I don't know. I'm singing the vowel that's in the word. But I mean, do you modify it or are you modifying it? And when I have to really think about it and go, I suppose I am, but I'm not thinking, well,
you're not modifying
whatever the resonance is. If I'm going, I'm going with what is ringy and buzzy above my head, and then it identifies what the vowel is going to be, you know?
Yeah.
It's why I'm very cautious to, if I hear tenors having an issue that I work with and they're getting around a different note, I'm very careful to say, maybe think a bit more like changing a vowel isn't necessarily going to help it. It's helping them identify why a modified vowel works differently. And like you said, taking a siren through the range and tracking that
Mm,
No. Okay, that's why it's working better, you know? And for
wow.
me, like, if you can't tell, I'm technique and opera nerd obsessed. So that's,
Dude, you're making my day. This is fun. I'm
oh, I'm
loving
glad.
this.
But one of my heroes is the great underrated Mario Filipeschi, who I
Hmm.
love, and Jack got me to identify what he was doing with his ah vowel that helped him consistently stay so buzzy in that range, and it was just really thinking this very beautiful, full of harmonics vowel, you know. And like
Uh-huh.
you listen to him sit there and do that, the trio from Guglielmo Tell, and he just sits there and he goes troncar. It's not tronca. It's not too
Right.
chesty.
That's the
Tronca. It's this vowel that has so much spin to it. And then again, when I analyze, okay, why does that work? Why does this beautiful vowel work? One thing I noticed is it completely detaches the jaw from the
jaw.
issue. You're not
Yes.
going car and biting it,
Yes.
car, and this stays out of it. It's I say all the time that
Mm.
like the tongue and the jaw, it's like one of those um, crime thriller movies where at the end you find out the best friend is the traitor, like, and you sit there and go, oh my god, jaw, it was you the whole time, like you realize that was the
Yeah.
perpetrator. So
So what you're talking about with the was a big point of Seth Riggs' teaching as well.
yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
he did the exercise, ah, where you slightly let that ah vowel go towards as you ascended the
Yes.
scale. And then
Mm-hmm.
in time, doing it over and over, it just disappears into one sound. But the
Big time.
function of that takes over. Larynx is
Huge.
more relaxed. Head voice connects a little bit more.
Yeah. And again, it's I think it's a big thing of making sure you're putting that sound in the right pocket, that it doesn't become but that
Uh,
it's a
yes,
it's
exactly.
it still has to kind of hit that domey spot that we can feel with our tongue, right where that hard palate, soft palate cupola is right there. And if
Aha.
and if and if you're south of that spot, you're in the wrong territory. Uh,
Mm,
no nasality. It's then you should be
yes.
good.
Yeah, I hear you hooked right into that nasal pharynx there. It's really
It's a journey, man. I mean, it's a lot of trial and error and realizing things work or they don't work, and you
right.
find out sometimes the hard way in mid performance that something you've been working on. This is I need to reevaluate, or a role that you took on that's
Wow.
like, yeah, this wasn't the right role for me, or it was too early for it, and or more importantly, the same approach that you had in Rossini is not going to work in Donizetti or Mozart, and having to kind of reevaluate. Uh, of course, not your technique. Your technique is your technique, but you do have to think about, all right, that F is not that F. And
Exactly. Exactly.
I find that
exactly.
now, as I'm getting older, I'm 40 now, I'm covering F more than I've ever covered in my life.
Mm.
And I'm doing a piece right now. It's an American piece, and it's very in the it's it feeds into my crossover Mario Lanza soul because it's very much written in that
Oh,
style, which I love.
that was
And
my
there's
idol. That's why I started to become an opera singer when I was 16. I heard Mario
giving
Lanza, and
you a
I'm
high
like,
five
there it
right
is,
now.
brother.
Mine too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I heard him. Eighth grade teacher played one of the movies in class because I grew up in Philadelphia. I'm still a
Okay.
hardcore
Oh, and
Philadelphian.
he's from South Philly.
Sure is. And when I heard this voice, I quite literally, I was 14. I looked at the screen and I was a very cocky, kid, musical theater. I wasn't any good at sports, but I thought I was. But I remember I just looked at that screen and I went, that's what I'm going to do. I said, I'm doing that. Because I had just this guy, I got bitten by the theater bug. My sister, who's a phenomenal singer, she's really great. And, she sings in bands and stuff, but she's a teacher now, but she still has this fantastic voice. And she's the one who pulled me into it. And So I was doing musical theater, but then I was like, oh, and then I heard that voice and I said, no, 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 that's what I'm going to do. So
That's how many singers has he influenced like that, right? Over the
all three
years.
tenors.
Yeah, right.
Uh, Joseph Kalea was another one of them, and I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
so many people I know that was their first love was they heard him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Even
it's
I interviewed Jason Howard, a
yeah,
Welsh baritone. He said the same thing.
mhm. It's his influence is amazing, and it's why there's those the purists who really want to turn their nose up at the crossover thing and those people, but it's don't forget their appeal and what they're able to do. And I know plenty of Andrea Bocelli eye rollers and stuff like that. But I'll tell you, man, I went to my first Bocelli concert this spring in
Hmm.
Zurich. And a very good friend of mine is his soprano when he tours in Europe. So, she's like, oh, let's meet up and come see the concert. I can't remember having that much fun at a concert in a very
Wow.
long time.
Isn't
And
that
I sat there
beautiful?
at that concert. And the man is a machine. Every night he's out there doing this insanely demanding program. And he's out there doing it, and people are like, he uses mixed voice. Mixed voice, mixed voice. He's singing every day like that. And it's just consistency.
Yeah.
And I sat there by the end of the concert, I was almost frustrated. And I sat there going, what are we doing wrong? Like, why isn't our experience that exciting and fun? Why don't people go in the opera house and go, God damn, that was so much fun. That was so much fun. It's so mannered and so buttoned up
Yes.
still. And
Yes.
I don't think it needs to become musical theater. I don't think it needs to become a spectacle. But I think there needs to be a renaissance of sorts of letting people know ultimately this was music for the common folk. This was not, always this highbrow kind of thing.
Exactly. And when the three
And
tenors did their thing together, they were breaking down some of those paradigms, which were
there
so
were,
cool. And of course,
there were.
Lanza broke all of those paradigms as well.
They did a Zurich every year does, Oper für alle every summer, and they put the big screen up and they do a live telecast of what's going on that night in the house. And this year it was the new production of Carmen. And
Hmm.
I was leaving the house. I had just a rehearsal with my pianist, and I walked out, and the square right out front of the opera house, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people squeezed in there on a lovely summer evening, all there to
Wow.
watch an opera on TV. And I sat there going, man, it's still important. It's still vital. It's still relevant. People love this. And
Yes.
why is their intrigue so much that they stop right at the front door and they go, wow, it's really great, but it's like opera is this beautiful do not touch museum. I love to admire
Exactly.
it from afar and it's really nice and I'll take a picture, but I wouldn't dare approach it. And
Yes.
it's such approachable music, and people forget that. And
Yeah, there's the
watching,
scene. There's the
please.
scene from the Great Caruso when Caruso makes his debut at the Met, and he goes outside and he sees the common people, and they couldn't get
Mhm,
in, so he stands on top of a truck and he starts singing to the people. That's
mhm,
the kind of thing that I think
absolutely.
opera. I think it's actually starting to modulate that direction. There are
Mhm.
people pushing that. I had another tenor on by the name of Ben Gully, who's an
Oh, what a
amazing,
great voice!
right?
Wow, I
and
love
he
that.
and he can cross over into pop kind of R&B, and he's equally as great doing that stuff. And
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like,
please. Sorry, I
yeah,
keep
and
cutting you
I'm
off.
like, when you can do that and reach an audience and then pull them over into your opera stuff
Yeah,
and make it fun for them, wow,
yeah. I
that's
still, I still love to, if I'm in the area and I can make it work, do a little open mic nights with my friends and play guitar and do all the kind of stuff I used to do when I had a band in high
awesome.
school. And I still go online and I think for Fourth of July I just recorded and posted a Bruce Springsteen song on social media just because
There you go. Why
That's
not, right?
yes, and I love that, and I
Right.
think it comes down to just loving it. It's all music. Ultimately, it's all music that opera can make you tap your foot as much as jazz or rock can. And
Sure.
it's different words for the same thing. It's all music.
I also sing other things.
Yeah.
And to look at myself as an artist, as opposed to putting myself into this little box called opera singer, I
Yeah.
think, and that's what DeStefano, I was telling you about him. He was a pop singer before he was an opera singer.
Yes.
He was
Nino.
exactly, and what a perfect, pure sound that was, right?
Yeah.
Even Caruso, same thing, street singer.
Yeah. It's yeah, I mean it's I remember when we reach that age where you have to decide what you want to do, and by that I mean
Yes.
college and what you're going to study. Uh, I still really at the time really liked musical theater. I loved acting. I had like a small agent, and I would go and do TV and film auditions here and there still, and had a couple things. So I was still involved in everything, and I also love playing guitar and writing songs with my band and everything. And this is kind of an indicator of the mentality that most people have. I sat there and I said, okay, well, what do I want to do? I can either pursue something else at a formal education level and then audition for musical theater. I can still play with my band and this and that, or I can only do opera. That was my mindset. Is I said, if it's
Mm,
opera, it's only opera and that's it. But if I decide on the other things, I can always dabble in the other ones and this and that. My mind said opera means you can't do anything else because the
right.
discipline and this and that. And to a degree, that's true.
That's true. Yes, to a
But at
degree.
the same time, it's it again plays into the narrative that it is this unbelievably exclusive club that only a
Right.
handful of people could possibly understand. And it's just,
Mm-hmm. Not true.
I have friends who, when they talk to me about it and they don't know anything, they always apologize. I don't know anything. I don't want to sound stupid. I'm like, dude, just talk about it.
Yeah,
It's just,
that's when they say, "Oh, I love opera. I just went to Phantom of the Opera."
yeah. And I never roll my eyes at that. I'm like, oh, well, it's not an opera, but yeah, there's some merit there. Like, hey,
Yes.
like the worst
Yes.
thing we can do is to just reinforce the
Hey,
snobbery that sometimes comes with
uh,
what happens in the business.
I'm a huge Phantom fan, right? But
Yeah,
it's
totally.
just the lack of people understanding what it is. You know what? Hey, there was a point in my life that I didn't know the difference. So
There it is. I
it is
remember
what it.
going to there was a gala in Berlin, and I was an exchange student in Germany when I was in high school, and so there was a big gala for Götz Friedrich, who was great stage director at the time, and believe he was artistic director of Deutsche Oper in Berlin for years. But anyway, there was this big gala, and I managed to get a ticket in the very last row of the house, and I'm all excited. And I forget who the tenor was. It's terrible, but he came up to do Nessun Dorma at the gala, and as soon as he let go of the note, like I had seen at the Three Tenors concert and this and that, I just started clapping when he finished the note, and the orchestra was still going.
Mm.
And all these old German women looked at me and just lit into me,
Oh,
like
yeah.
like really huffing me. And I was like, Jesus, I'm sorry, I'm just excited and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, like, and there are people who that was enough to scar them from ever going to the theater again because somebody did that. I mean, me, I was 17. I'm like, hey, man,
Yes.
I am an opera singer. I was 17. So,
Same thing happens a lot with O mio babbino caro, right? Because they
exactly.
sing
Yeah.
that high note and then there's that little interlude and people think it's over and they start clapping.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
And they don't hear the Babbo Pietà. That's coming, but they don't know that.
Well, it's also it's cultural too in many ways.
Absolutely.
In Zurich, there was for years, and it was amazing because I didn't know this until I read his biography. But there was a great, great, great Irish tenor in the early 1900s named John O'Sullivan, and he
Mm.
was just this rare bird who had a voice of steel and could sing things like You Tell and Le Huguenot like every other night of the week with this massive, huge dramatic tenor voice that went up to like high D. He was incredible. And O'Sullivan was on tour with the Paris Opera, and they went to Zurich for a few performances. And he wrote his wife and said, they need to change the name of this city from Zurich to Verbot, because everything is, you can't do anything in this city. Like, it is forbidden, for example, at the Zurich Opera back then, to applaud after arias. You could only applaud after at the end of each act.
Oh my God.
And at the end of the show. And singers would go there and go, the hell, was I that bad? Because it was silence after arias. And to a degree, that carries on to this day. It is the most mid-performance. It's the most lax public I've ever seen, to the point where I did a show with some Italian colleagues, and they went to me. They're like, what the hell was that? What the hell's wrong with them? But then sure enough, when the show was over, they exploded and they went crazy.
They went crazy.
And they were like, and they're looking at the audience like, I could have used this after my aria. Thank you.
Exactly.
But
right.
Again, that's the habits there. I'm in Cincinnati right now on a project, and in the season they had a Traviata, and every break in anything there was applause from the audience, and they just applauded at everything, and I love that. It's great, to the point where the conductor, who's Italian, was making his debut. He told me, he goes, I was shocked that people applaud after everything. I said, well, it's just a culture. We love, we're a clap happy people.
Yes. Yes.
And they love to do it. It's the same at the Met. It's the same at every house. It's just, when you get a button in the music, applaud. It's like, no, that's the aria. You applaud after the cabaletta. Don't do it yet. Like, it's
I love that, though. We need the world needs more of that. Hey, I got a couple of questions for you. I saw.
Yeah, I've been yakking away right now.
That's okay. It's wonderful. I noticed that you have sung quite a few Arturos, but you haven't done Edgardos.
Yeah.
And your voice just sounds perfect for that role.
Yeah, it's the what do you want to call it? The thing that's been eluding me for a very long time, and I had the possibility to do one, but I couldn't get out of it scheduling wise. And
would you like to do it?
Oh my God, it's not a dream role, it's my dream role currently, to do that role. And I want to do it so bad, and I did get to cover it in Zurich for Piotr Pichała when he was there, and he was arriving late. It was a COVID production, so I got to do some rehearsals and stuff with the maestro, and it was very nice. But yeah, it's one that I love Arturo. It's a fun little role, but it's one of these things where I feel like I'm almost stuck in a way like Jerry Hadley was, where he was just the Arturo for years and years and years, and then finally he got his
Yes, right. Well, I'm going to fly to wherever it is that you're doing it when do it.
I'll let you know the second I sign the contract.
Thank you, brother. Hey, I want everybody to hear you, and I have this the Bella Innamorata that you sang that to me is just astoundingly gorgeous. Where was this? Can you tell us where?
Yeah, sure. So this was the Viñas competition in Barcelona. It was I had won the Zarzuela Prize, and it was the winner's concert basically, and I was the first one out of the gate to go, and I just remember I was so excited. All the judges and everybody were there, and I was yakking away with Araisa, who's one of my heroes, and I was just chatting with him. And then all the stage management's like, "You're on." I'm like, "Ah, shit! I'll be right back." I came out and just did that, and then my work was done for the day. So I just sang my one thing and kicked it off, and then got out of my tux and had a nice tapas after that. So it was nice.
Excellent. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So here we go. Bella Innamorata.
Con tu imagen sueño y un amor dichoso busco para mí. Bella enamorada, que eres mi consuelo, ya sin tu cariño, no podré vivir. Noche de amor. la sombra vives, dime ya quién eres, y sabrás mi amor. Bella entre las bellas, linda enamorada, tú eres mi tormento, tú eres mi tormento, yo tu esclavo soy. Noche de amor, noche misteriosa, ven hacia mí, sombra de mujer. Suave placer ver lo que soñamos. Quiero vivir por volverla a ver. Noche de amor, noche misteriosa, ven hacia mí, sombra de mujer, ilusión perdida, quiero recordar un amor lejano. Ya no volverá.
Wow. Bravo, fratello mio.
Grazie.
Wow. Dude, that is really, really beautiful. I congratulate you on
Thank you.
not only the way that you're singing so beautifully and functionally so healthy, but your knowledge about technique is refreshing for me to actually talk to a tenor that knows what they're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just a I don't want to say a hobby because it's also my career and my profession, but
It's a passion.
it's one of the more
right?
interesting parts. Yeah, it's one of
Yeah.
to me the more interesting parts of what we do.
Absolutely. Wow. Very, very cool.
Thank
Well, you
you.
probably don't know, but when I was with Di Stefano, when I was 23 years old, I went to the Caruso competition in Italy.
Oh, wow.
And I lost my voice, man. And that year I had strep almost the whole year, off and on, kept coming back. So anyhow, I went there. They passed me all the way to the finals without ever singing a note. Couldn't sing. Had to walk out on stage. Di Stefano said, "You got to go out and apologize." He was the main judge. It was devastating for me. Lost my voice. Went to doctors all over the world. Nobody could figure it out. I don't know if you know what spasmodic dysphonia is, but it's when you
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
when you lose the connection from your brain to your voice, right? And so you talk like this kind of puberty thing.
Wow.
It took me 8 years to get it back before I made my debut at Lincoln Center in Mephistopheles. So
Oh my God.
I have a great appreciation for technique and the struggle that now you guys are going through to maintain it.
It's one thing that I think I'm in a fairly unique position to be able to pass on, if you want to use that word. Is I did have a lot of vocal troubles myself too, and I'm very open about talking about them because I think that there's such a stigma around not talking about things, and you shouldn't do it because it's it makes people, and it did. I remember I was very outspoken about a disorder I had in about 2017 or 18, where I had a temporary paresis of the superior laryngeal nerve.
Wow.
Where I was in New York on a gig, and I remember waking up and my voice was so deep, and I thought it was allergies or something. But I was like, no, this is something really wrong. Where I was trying to sing, it was so hoarse, and I had about 4 notes at my disposal. And what was weird was that any sort of inflection in my speaking voice I had, my voice would give out. So if I tried to do this, it would go, I don't know, and no sound would come out.
Wow.
And I went to some of the top ENTs in the city, and they were like, I don't know, it could just be an allergy thing, but it's strange because there's no swelling and this and that. Finally, I saw somebody who said, look, I've diagnosed this in people before, and she told me what it was. And it was about 6 months of a lot of extensive rehab and stuff like that to get back on there. And again, it made me more acutely aware of what I was doing and wasn't doing technically. And I had to go back.
Excellent.
And change things. And even then I had, a lot of issues with reflux. And then I had a lot of issues with, stage fright and nerves like that, and things that really affected me. It almost manifested physical problems in me because I was so stressed out. And
yes,
I really tried to talk to a lot of students who deal with that and be like, hey man, I didn't get great advice when I was going through it. I got people saying, you just got to do it, and they're right. They're right. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but tell me how.
Yeah. Where are the tools?
Exactly. And what are some of the pitfalls I can avoid? And that's where I think I can be of some kind of service to people and be like, look, take care of your body and your instrument, do body work, become familiar with your body and how it moves. It's more important than you realize.
Yeah, I remember doing the Met auditions when I was 21 years old or something. And by the way, I sang cello MR. And the bad part was I won second place, so at 21. Nice. But anyhow, one of the judges took me aside afterward and he said, okay, you've got a great voice. You cry too much when you sing. And you're pushing on the high notes, so just don't push. And I said to the judge, can you tell me how not to? Well, just don't do it. Well, can you show me? Because I don't know how.
Exactly.
And that was so frustrating that they didn't give you the solution, but yet saying don't do something without the answer of here it is. So I think we're on the same page, helping people in the next generation, giving them some answers that obviously you figured all of that out and would be able to give people shortcuts with not only vocal technique, but mental, emotional techniques as well.
I figured out most of it. Still working.
Yeah, well, that never ends, right?
Exactly. Never.
It's like the pursuit of God. That never ends. It's like
exactly.
discovering.
Very
well,
right there.
Well, my brother, we did it. We got to run. I am absolutely honored to have you on. I'm a huge fan. I sent the recording of your Zarzuela to my son, who is bilingual Spanish and a singer, and he's like, oh my God, that guy is great.
Oh, thank you.
He's an American? Yes, he is.
Well, it was funny because at competition, I one of my closest friends in this biz is a Latino tenor, Mexican tenor, Arturo Chacon Cruz. And Arturo's one of my really good friends. And
he's been on the show.
I know. I saw his episode. And Arturo, when I was applying for that, I said, should I apply for the Zarzuela prize? And he goes, oh, you have the perfect voice for it. And I said, yeah, but Viñas extensively archives all of the past winners in the history of the competition. I said, there's never been a North American winner of that prize ever. And he just said, then you'll be the first. And he was right. So.
And you nailed it, brother.
Thank you, man.
Nailed it.
Thank you.
So once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Being on the show. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for being here with Mr. Andrew Owens.com. Is that your website?
No, it's just go to my Instagram, Andrew Owens Tenor. You can find me there. I'm
on
working
Instagram.
on the website thing.
Okay, excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being here on the Daniel Hendrick Experience every Sunday. Super glad you're here. Remember, go to danielhendrick.com. You can listen to the podcast there, or go to YouTube, and you'll be able to see the video version of it under the Daniel Hendrick Experience. Until next time, everybody, I love you all. Thank you for all of the messages and great notes. See you next Sunday.